To make the door, I'm again going to use the Cottage Cuts Windows die, and in a minute I'll explain how to make it without the die. And I've got both the pattern paper and the purple foam cut to 2 by 3 3/4, and I've backed each piece with Stick-It. Now, in order to do this, we want to do a little partial die cutting, and so we'll take this die, put it near that top, and attach it with some washi tape, and then take your cutting pad and hold your cutting pad back so it does not come and cut this windowsill part, because we're going to extend the 2 sides to make the door frame. And I'll do that for both the pattern paper and the piece of foam, and then I'll be back. So now I have these 2 pieces cut, and for each one I'm going to turn it on its side on the craft mat and line up just underneath this top part on one of the lines on my mat, and then I'm going to count over 2.5 inches and trim that off. So 2.5 from the bottom of that top piece, and then cut them both off. Next, we'll line up one of the outside edges on a line on your craft mat. Make sure it looks nice and square here. You can put this top part on a line coming the other direction, and then we're going to extend this outside line down with our craft knife. And don't be afraid to attach these pieces with a little bit of washi tape to your craft mat so they don't go anywhere while you're making these cuts. I'm going to repeat that on the other sides, and I'll just flip this around to do this side, and I'll do it on my foam piece as well. You have to be careful with the foam because it's a little wibbly wobbly. The Stick-It is helping to stabilize it somewhat. Next, on the back side, so that I can see it, I'm going to draw a line 1/8 of an inch up from the bottom on both pieces. And make sure that line goes all the way across. Then we'll extend the inside lines down to that 1/8 inch line that we just made. Just line up your ruler along the inside edge that's up here. Again, use some washi tape if you need to stabilize it. Turn the piece around so that it's facing in this direction, and extend this side down to the line. And then finally cut off on this line, and it's best to do it in this position so that you can put the most pressure on the paper, and just follow that line. And then you'll have a nice little door frame, and I'll repeat those final steps on my piece of foam. Next, I'll remove the Stick-It backing from the pattern paper piece, and I'll attach that to the front of the foam piece. And then I'll give that a good squish to make sure it's well attached. If you don't have the die, you can make a similar frame for the door just like you made the window frames. You'll start out with the piece of 1.5 inch circle at the top, and if the rectangle is still 1.5 inch wide, and now it's 2 3/4 inches long to allow for the length of the door frame. You'll back that with foam, put some Stick-It or score tape on the back, and then back it with foam, and then cut out an interior rectangle. It's still 1/4 inch from the top edge of the rectangle. The other 3 sides are just 1/8 of an inch in. And then you will have something that is very similar to the frame that is made with the die. Now for the door itself, I'm starting with a piece of the green pattern paper that is 2 by 3. I did ink it a little bit. And I have my little movers and shapers window die. This time I'm putting it lengthwise, and I'll still center it on here. We've got some extras, so if you don't get it perfectly straight, don't worry. But try to get it centered and about 1/4 inch from the top. And if you don't have this die, I'll show you how to work without it in just a minute. So once you've cut out your windows, and I have it upside down here just so you can see it more easily, I'm going to turn it on its side, and I'll line my ruler up with the 3/8 inch mark on the top of those windows. So the 3/8 is at the top of the windows, sorry for the glare, and then I'll just cut off this excess. Then I'll turn it around and line it up on my craft mat and cut it off at just shy of 2 3/4. So find 2 3/4 and just bring it back just a little smidge from 2 3/4. Now I'll line it up on my craft mat so that it's straight, and I have the inside of these windows right along a line on my craft mat. And I'm going to cut this off so that I have 5/16 between the edge and where I'm going to cut it off. So 5/16 is a 1/16 greater than 1/4 inch. I'm just lining up my ruler on my craft mat. You can see right here it's at the 5/16, and down here it's at the 5/16, and then I'll cut this off. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. And then we have the windows positioned nicely inside of the door. If you don't have the movers and shapers die, but you do have the cottage cuts die, you can cut a door shape that is 1 7/16 by 2 5/8, and then center cut a little rectangle out of here that is 3/4 inch wide by 1 inch long, and start at 3/8 from the top. So it'll start 3/8 from the top. It'll be 3/4 wide, and it'll be 1 inch tall, and that'll give you an opening that you can put some mullions across if you want to. And then if you don't have the cottage cuts die, you'll cut your door panel to 1 1/2 by 2 3/4, the same size as this rectangle was, and again come down 3/8 inch and cut an opening that is centered 3/4 wide by 1 inch tall, and that'll give you a space for your window. Now that I have my door cut, I'm going to take my dusty Concord marker around the 4 edges. And then I'll put a little vintage photo around those openings, just like we did for the windows. Now hold your door up behind the frame, and it should be even on the bottom down here. And if you see green through these little holes, just come behind here and trim off just a teeny little bit at the top there. So here you can see the little bit I trimmed off. And then next I'll remove the stick-it backing from the foam and attach the door to the frame. Now when I was attaching the frame to the door, I saw that I neglected to put ink on the edges of my purple cardstock. I put a note in the video, so hopefully you'll have seen that, so you won't be like me and have to do it now. If you do have to do it now, just be very careful not to get purple ink on your door. Then cut a piece of acetate that's big enough to cover the window openings in your door. If you're not using the die, obviously you just need to have some kind of rectangular piece of acetate. Just cut it big enough so that you'll be able to attach it to the back of your door. And if you've been using the dies, you can just remove the stick-it adhesive and adhere the acetate to the back of your door. If you have not been using the dies, you can take on your acetate if you want to, like we did with the windows, and cut some strips and just make a simple cross in the middle like we did for the window, and that way you'll have some mullions to go across your window pane. Either way, attach your acetate to the back of the door. Next, I'll color some cardstock to go behind the windows and this little part up here at the top. I've cut mine to be the size of the door panel down here. You can cut it smaller if you want. And then I just have a little 1/2-inch strip that I'll attach to the top here. And I'll just color using the same inks that I did for the windows, which were Scattered Straw, Fossilized Amber, and Spiced Marmalade on the bottom, and Fired Brick on the top. Next, I've added some 1-inch score tape to the back of my red piece, and I'll just add it to the top of my yellow piece. Then I'll go around the edges with my purple marker, and then add score tape to the remainder of my window panel. So I've added some score tape to the back of my frame panel, and I have some collage medium. You could use glossy accents or something. If you're using this die, you need something to put teeny little dots up here at the top so that you can adhere your colored panel to the back of the frame. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'll take my little detail scissors and trim off any excess of my colored cardstock. And then I'll touch up those white edges with my dusty Concord marker. And there's our little door. We can add a little piece of bling for a doorknob. I think I'll do that after I get it on the building, so I check to see what color I want to use. This is the placement I've decided on for the windows on the front of the watering can. I'm going to hold the door up 3/8 of an inch from the bottom here because I'm going to have a little front porch or stoop or whatever you want to call it that's going to come in right here. And so to start with, I'm going to draw a line that is 3/8 of an inch up from the bottom. And then in order to determine the left and right spacing, I'm going to bring in the door pulls. These are Graphic 45 door pulls. Now if you're using something else, you can use those to help you determine your window placement. And I just want to have a little bit of a gap in between here and bring them in from the edge and find a dimension there that's pleasing to me. It looks like it'll be about, could be a 1/2 inch, it could be 3/8, it could be 7/16. So whatever works for you there, just kind of figure out that'll be the outside placement for both sets of these. So I'll start by putting my door on. I'll use the 3/8 inch line that I drew at the bottom for the bottom placement, and then I will measure in the width I've decided to have on the side here. This line is a straight vertical, so you can use that to help you make sure you get your door in straight. And I'll just remove the score tape backing and put that door on. Then I'll turn the watering can on the side and measure up from the very bottom to the top of my door frame. And for me, that is 3.5 inches. And I'll bring that measurement over here to this side. And I'll just take a little Post-it note and put that in there. So then I'll know that that's the top of my window frame. And then whatever measurement I used over here on this side, I'll use that same measurement on this side and line up my top of my window with the Post-it note and the edge of, I'm going to line up the edge of this frame here, this long part, not the little parts that stick out, with the measurement that I used on the door frame. And I'll go ahead and attach that window down. Now for the two top windows that I'm going to use these little door pulls with, I'm going to just nip off the very corners on the bottom. They want to, with They're just a little bit interfering with the door pull. Now yours may vary, so unless you've got the same, your same die, the same door pulls, you may not need to do that. Just check and see how it works for you. I've decided that I'm going to have the top of my windows be a 1/2 inch down from the bottom of my trim up here, so I'm going to add a couple of post-its to help me with that placement. So I drew a 1/2 inch line on my post-it that I can line up with my trim, and that'll give me the top edge for these two windows, and then I'll bring in their outside edges to be the same as what I used for the bottom two windows. And then once I'm happy with my placement, I'll reach in from the inside to support it, and I'll give those a good burnish. I decided on the color for my doorknob, and I added that. Next, I'll turn the watering can over. And on this side, I'm going to have 3 windows. I'll start with the 2 on the top. I can use my little 1/2 inch placements again here, and then put them in from the side, the same measurement that I used on the front. Next, I'll measure up 3.5 inches from the bottom, which was the height of our windows on the front of the watering can, and put a post-it note here. Now I'm using the bottom of the post-it note is the 3.5, and I'm using my centering ruler to mark center on that post-it note. So I know the center of my window should align with that tick mark I just made, and then the top comes up to the edge of that post-it note, and I'll just make sure that it is sitting here vertically. And once you're happy with the placement of those windows, reach in from the inside to support it and burnish them down. Now I've flipped back over to the front, and I'm going to add my little door pulls. I'll make sure that they are centered and that they're nice vertical. Then I'll mark the holes and drill them with my awl. Once I've drilled my holes, I'm just going to add a little bit of glossy accents or diamond glaze around those holes where the brads are going to go through, and then I'll insert my brads and fasten them on the inside of the watering can. And then I also reached into the inside, and you can see I put some drops of the diamond glaze and glossy accents on the back of the brad legs. And then I'll just allow that to dry. For my small windows, I've taken a couple pieces of washi tape, or this is low-tack tape, and put some on the top and bottom. This is just going to help us test the placement of these windows. And then I've cut a strip of post-it, this is the sticky post-it on this side, to 3/4 of an inch wide. Now you can use your ruler instead of the post-it tape, but I find it a little bit difficult to juggle everything, so I just cut this little strip of post-it tape. And I'm going to line this up with the edge of my decorative paper down here on the spout. And then I'll take one of my windows and I'll line its edge up with the post-it, and then I'll see that these corners, the corner to the edge, the corner to the edge, are about the same. It's not critical. And then I'll fasten the little pieces of washi tape down. And then I'll take this piece of post-it and I'll put it parallel with that edge of the window there. And I'll put my other window on in a similar fashion. And this is just a test placement for these windows to see if we like it. I'll remove this piece of post-it and I'll bring in the watering can. Now on this spout piece, I have the brads pulled back so they're not pushing through here. And I'm just going to put this on the lip here where it's supposed to go. And then you can just look at this straight on, but I'll pick it up so that you can see it. And what you want to look for is to see if you like the placement of the windows and the angle that they're at. Are they perpendicular, parallel enough to the other windows for you, or do you need to make any adjustments? And if you do, just move the washi tape a little bit. And of course, if you'd rather have your windows a different spacing, it's up to you. It's your project. Do it how you like. So once you've got your windows where you want them, gently remove the spout. And then I'm going to just take another piece of Post-it and mark the corner and the edge so that I'll know exactly where to put each of my windows. And I'm just recycling the Post-its that I used before. And now I'll be able to, as long as these Post-its stay in place, I can remove my windows, take the score tape backing off of them, and burnish them in place. And then repeat that process for the other two windows on the other side. Once you have your windows on both sides, we can now add the spout to the watering can. And I'll do that by putting some pieces of glue down along the spout. Maybe just a little bit right here on this edge. And then I'll carefully put this on. I've got it centered down here at the bottom. I'll just hold that in place for a minute. If you've got some super low tack tape, you can put that on here as well. Once you have the glue on the spout here and you have it in the place you want, I've taken a rubber band and I've gone around the bottom edge here and around the whole watering can, and that'll hold that nice and tight right there until it has a chance to set up and dry thoroughly. And then once your glue has set up, you can go ahead and attach the brads on the inside of the bridge there.